Good day, Africans. Good day, Zimbabweans, wherever you are, and welcome to African Voices 24.com, and welcome to this program where we are fortunate to have a real estate expert in Harare, Mr. Kura Chiota, to discuss about Zimbabwe's property market developments. In the past few years, there have been many changes in the market. We've seen the Reserve Bank coming up with new interest rates, bank rates, and hiking it to almost the highest in the world, from 80% to 200%. And we have also seen a number of things happening in this country, many building projects, despite the challenges that we are facing, high inflation rates. But there are a lot of building projects ongoing. But of late, we've also had the other players in the sector, like cement manufacturers, pointing out that there have been some reduction in the demand. So this brings a lot of complexities to the issues, and we cannot understand them as lay persons. And we are fortunate to have Mr. Kura. Mr. Kura, how are you? And welcome to the program.
I thank you so much. I am in great health and happy to be joining you this morning. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Wonderful. Let's get straight to the issue, the Zimbabwe property market developments. How do you characterize or describe the Zimbabwean property market?
When we talk about a market, we always have to break it down to different constituencies. So there's the commercial market, there's the owner-occupier market. So from a global perspective, as always, Zimbabweans, there's something in our DNA. We love real estate. So on the worker level, there's demand for decent accommodation. The ability to provide that decent accommodation is constrained, where developments are taking a longer. The supply chain into that, as you had mentioned earlier, stuff like supply of cement, and then we have brick prices also rising. So it is difficult. To do developments at scale, which bring down the unit costs, is difficult in this environment. We have town councils going into a political process for the elections. So the passing of grandstands and schemes and getting the right people to sign off new township developments is a bit slower. But the appetite and the demand is there. The demand is also, and I've been trying to put together some research on where is the demand being met from. Because if we look at our listed property or our listed supply chains, the brick guys, Willdale, their volumes were down 9%. PPC, their volumes were down. Turnal, their volumes were down. So I think we might have an increase in the informal market, where a US dollar buys a real US dollar of value. So people are shunning formal hardware suppliers and rather importing directly. Cement, I know, comes in from Zambia, and other materials directly on the high end. They're coming on ships from China. But on an investment basis, we still see much interest in real estate for both as a household, where do we store value, and then commercial for investors and our pension funds that are looking after us. We're also on the search for value as well. So demand is high, but on the supply side, we're facing constraints of cost and availability of materials.
So let's look at it. If we are going to the region and probably in the continent, how do we compare? How does our market, both the commercial and the other subsectors, compare with the region and the continent?
Mkoma Peter, you're pulling me right into the controversy of the moment. There's always that expression, Zimbabwean property is always expensive, it's overvalued. But the reality is, in terms of a nominal number, yes, you're going to pay a lot more for a square meter for property in Harare than you would in a Johannesburg, in a Gaborone, in a Lusaka. But if you've taken that as your comparator, perhaps we are lower. If you go to a Mombasa or a Lagos, then we become laggards. So with any comparison, the important thing is, what are you comparing it to and what utility do you get out of it? So we do have nominally expensive properties here. The constraints within the market are that we don't have the kind of financing that the other people can benefit from, and we don't produce housing at the scale that the South African market produces. I give you, in Zimbabwe, we have less than 300,000 registered properties at the deeds office, versus South Africa has 6 million properties at the deeds office. That market is deep and is liquid, and you have many takers, whereas the Zimbabwean market is constrained. If you want to buy in, you're going to pay up.
So let's be straight here. If you were to advise someone who is in diaspora, who has got opportunities maybe to buy in Nairobi or in Johannesburg or in Mombasa and Harare, in terms of returns, you are just an individual, but you want to do some investment in property. In terms of returns, in terms of the cost, how do we compare with the other cities?
If it's on a cold and neutral returns basis, we are going to be behind. So the problem with real estate is that we bring our hearts and our minds into it. We have our diaspora who want to buy a piece of land, ekaya, so there's an emotional attachment to the acquisition. So we are trying to put an economic brain together with an emotional brain. So here you're going to pay more. If you just were a cold-hearted investor, there are opportunities that are outside of Zimbabwe to make and retain value longer. But that being said, while we are in the capital constrained market that we are right now, there is a gap. If you were to build a property in Zimbabwe from a stand, throw a slab, put it to window level, roof level, and sell it, you could sell that complete property for more than the constituent parts. So there's a development profit that's able to be made. But as an economist would say, ceteris paribus, all things being equal, that's if we don't have a change in currency, that's if we don't have an SI saying that we have to pay X, Y, and Z for a particular product. So absolutely, there are more stable returns and financeable returns elsewhere. In Zimbabwe, it's an equity play, but as equity, you have risks attached to that.
Yeah, talking about policy changes, and Zimbabwe had a major share of policy changes, and some of them unexpectedly. Were you guys in the property market expecting the interest rates hike, and how has that been impacted on the market itself?
No, we are Zimbabweans on the ground, and we never know how to anticipate these policy shifts. So it's been quite remarkable what the response has been to the market. So if we go to basic economics, when a price rises, demand falls. And we have seen at the end of 2021, we had approximately 4,800 mortgages registered, active mortgages registered in Zimbabwe. When we've come into 2022, we've seen that number decline. People have paid back because the high costs of servicing that debt at 200% are unsustainable. So people have done other things to pay back that debt, and they've reduced the amount of borrowing that they've done in Zim dollars because of that. So it's further tightening the market that we don't have the broad participants who have the liquidity to buy new product. So new product is essentially being funded out of pocket. The Zimbabwean model is typically one round of savings to acquire the stand, second round of savings to build a cottage, and then eventually over time to build a dream house on the front of the property.
Right, so welcome for those who are just joining us to our program, African Voices 24.com, and your program around Africa. And today we are looking at the Zimbabwe property market development, and we are fortunate to have a real estate expert, Mr. Kura Chiota in Harare, who is giving us and breaking down what the market is going through. And for all the information that you may need, you may call him, you may discuss with him. He is available as an expert in this field. But Mr. Kura, what have been the main challenges if we are to look at the property market for buyers, for example? If you want to buy a property in this environment, what are the challenges? What are the main challenges for sellers too in this market?
For the two to cross, a buyer to meet a seller, there needs to be an agreement on price. Prices are rising, but while prices are rising, you have the expectation. So sellers keep on increasing their prices, but the price increases have to be matched with an affordability on the side of the buyers. And then we have some challenges with that. In terms of meeting those expectations and raising money to make those payments, I think we've seen a slowdown in the affordability. So people are taking longer, and they're seeking longer installment sale processes. So when you're buying a stand on installment, you're going to pay 30% down, and then some people try 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, but it's becoming difficult. I know there's one particular bank that is trying to innovate in that space, and they're saying, look, we can give you a US dollar mortgage, but it's a mortgage, I call it in Zimbabwe, because it's only a 5-year term. Internationally, we'll understand mortgages can be fixed rate, and they can go from 10, 20, 30 years in some markets. So here we've got, I'd rather call it home finance on 5 years. So there's a constraint there. Then from a developer side, we're now entering into a riskier situation. The costs of developing, you're paying for the yellow metal, you're buying diesel, you're paying your labor in US dollars. We need to recoup that money in US dollars. We always have the underlying possibility that things can change in our environment, and then you don't want a mismatch where you have a sale agreement that can be voided, or that the instrument of payment can no longer be relevant. So there'll be risk there, and where there's risk, you're going to have a higher price to compensate for that risk.
Yeah, talking about the issue of labor that you have brought in, we are facing brain drain in many other sectors, health services sectors, and education, and a lot of other sectors are losing the top brains. Is that also happening in the real estate sector? And if you are to advise someone who wants to invest in this sector, are they going to get readily available skilled personnel, our electricians, our plumbers, our civil engineers, our quantity surveyors? What is the skills situation in this sector like?
So we have a challenge in the sector where the last multi-story building that we saw developed in Harare CBD was the Joiner City. I don't believe that we have a contractor with the capacity, let alone the technical capacity, so balance sheet, to be able to do that kind of construction with the kind of cranes and sophistication of the plant and equipment that needs to go in there. So we don't have the people, we don't have the capital, and we can do stuff 3, 4, 5 stories, but beyond that, I think we're challenged. On the smaller residential scale, there is a serious mismatch. And I know it's a huge pain point for my brothers and sisters in the diaspora, where faithfully they've been sending money home. But if you're sending money home, to get that contractor who knows what he's doing and is genuinely applying the funds to the project as it is, there's a huge monitoring gap that needs there. And it's a very real risk. There's some real need for a due diligence when you're building remotely from outside and sending money through.
So for those who are joining us, welcome back to our program, your program Around Africa, and we are looking at Zimbabwe's property market development with Mr. Kura Chiota, a property real estate expert in Harare. Let's conclude on this one. What attracts or put off investors who want to come in our market?
So real estate is essentially a business of confidence. And a real estate in return is something that is generated over time. So we need stability and predictability. What lubricates things is a growing economy. Where there's a growing economy, you have more demand and you have an increased ability to pay. What can assist with that and broaden the market can be appropriately priced finance that comes in. And once you've got an affordability and a demand, economics take over. People want to develop, people want to sell, people want to release value in land holdings that they may have had for generations. I've got a number of clients on my books who are that generation, our parents who sent us to school. They are downscaling and moving into smaller premises, and they want to release value. That's a cluster, if it's a development on the edge of a town. So there is the demand, but we need to empower that demand by affordability.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Kura. I think we can end it here. What do you suggest? What topics do you suggest we'll talk about next? Maybe probably next week when you find time on this platform.
I think really, if we're not even just diaspora market, but the practicality of a due diligence. What does it take when you're offered a piece of ground? What are the 5 questions that you need to know and see and understand before parting with your money? Because the greatest tears that I have are for our hardworking people when they get scammed, and we see it in the paper every week without fail. There's somebody who's given money to a person and they haven't got what they looked after. So my passion is putting real estate in the hands of people, and whatever I can do to contribute to that, my hand is up to do that work.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for your time. And indeed, that is a very important topic. We are hearing and reading a lot of stories about people losing lots of money, and some of the money is a lifetime saving. So yes, although I wanted us to look at the pension schemes and how they can benefit from the property market, but we can shelve that for another week. Let's talk about this. How do you manage risk So get in touch with us next week as we look at this matter further. But that leaves me to thank Mr. Kura. Thank you very much, and be blessed.
Anytime, Koma Peter. Thank you for the opportunity.